Okay. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So my name is Simon Trick, and I'm the chairman of Working People of Faith. Just to explain that our host tonight, Clotha Hashmi, is making sure you're all mute and is turning off your cameras. Now, the reason for that is to enable the speakers only to be seen on screen and also to avoid any accidental noise that might disturb the talks. Now, if you want a close-up of whichever person is speaking, go to the top right corner of your screen, click on the icon there, and then click Speaker View. And then whoever's talking will be with the large on the screen, and that's all you'll see when that speaker's talking. I'm not sure if that works on iPhones or any other sort of phone, but that certainly works on PCs and probably on Macs. Okay, so I should like to welcome you all to our event this evening, Woking People of Faith, the Early Years. The title does sound a bit like a prequel movie for Star Trek, but we like it. Anyway, now, normally I would spend some time explaining a little about what Woking People of Faith is and what it does, and also make introductions for all our guest speakers. But I'm not going to do that tonight, because the whole point of tonight is to get a glimpse into Woking People of Faith's origins and learn about why and how it was formed. As for introducing our guest speakers, I'm going to be leaving that up to our first guest, who is the Reverend Richard Cook. Now, I'm going to be seeing you again for the question and answer session. If you do have any questions during the evening, please type them into the chat section, which you can access by going, certainly on a computer, you can access it by going to the bottom of your screen, please, and hitting the chat button. Please make your questions as brief as possible, and please avoid making a long statement as part of your question. So I wish you all a very enjoyable evening. And now over to Richard Cook. Richard.
Thank you very much, Simon, for your welcome and introduction. And I've had the fun of talking to several of the people who Causa and others had identified as possible speakers. So I've been able to catch up and remind myself of several things that did happen back in the day. So my story starts in September 2004. I travelled to Pakistan with Imam Soleimani, who had been Imam at Shah Jahan Mosque. We'd been friends for about 8 years and had independently arranged to go to Pakistan on the very same day, and it turned out on the very same plane. Amazing. That seemed a hand of God in all of that. I went to Pakistan because I was doing a master's degree in Islamic studies based at Brunel University, and I was studying Sufism, or actually specifically Mirpuri Sufism, as suggested by Soleimani's wife, Salma Chowdhury. He was going to Pakistan to mark the anniversary of his father's death in Mansehra. During our time in Pakistan, we arranged to join a group of supporters of Dr. Tahir ul Qadri of Minhaj ul Quran fame and a member of the National Assembly at the time. And it was called The Golden Journey, and we went with about 50 other supporters of Dr. Qadri up into the mountains along the Karakoram Highway and up to Naran. On the 18th of September 2004, Dr. Qadri was due to speak to a very large crowd of his supporters in Abbottabad, about 5,000 supporters. And I think Causa has got a screen share here. Just before we arrived, and it really was just before we arrived, he wondered whether I too would like to speak to the crowd. Now, of course, I didn't speak Urdu and they didn't understand English, but anyway, it was all done by interpretation. So, at very short notice, I prayed for inspiration and decided to quote some words from Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, where he said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." I was introduced to the crowd as Bishop Cook of London, which drew great awe and wonder from the crowd, and I was faintly amused. I discovered that the Bishop of London never heard that I had been impersonating him, but there we go. So, when I spoke, I reminded the crowd that since 9/11, Muslims had been attacked by coalition forces from the so-called Christian West. So I said to them, throughout the world, Christians and Muslims are killing each other. But would it not be better if we could be friends? Jesus here calls us to make peace with each other so that together we can make a better world. That is why I'm here with you in Pakistan, to learn how to be friends, so that we can learn how to be friends with each other. Big applause. And because this speech was on a Saturday afternoon, my pictures were all over the Sunday papers of the Northwest Frontier Province. So my Muslim friends started being very scared that I was likely to be kidnapped by those with not very good motives. Anyway, that was a long time before Woking People of Faith started. But it seems to me that in essence, Woking People of Faith grew out of that friendship that I had developed with Suleimani and his wife Salma over many years. As I pointed out, she had been my local supervisor in my research project, and many others from Shah Jahan Mosque opened their hearts and lives to me, particularly when I told them that I was doing this project. I went to mosque more times than I can remember, more times my wife said than I had hot dinners. I just became friends there, and every time I turned up, everybody seemed to know me, which was wonderful. But I learned so much from Imam Suleimani about the local Muslim communities, because as those involved with the mosque will know, and I don't know if it's still the case, but certainly there was the Pakistan Muslim Welfare Association and the Kashmiri Muslim Welfare Association. They didn't always get on. But Suleimani's comment was that he knew that many of the people in his people were fearful to engage with the surrounding secular culture. Perhaps they every so often turned on the television and thought, Baywatch? Surely that isn't Christian. If it is, I don't want to be Christian. Some of you won't know what I mean, but there we go. So he knew that many were fearful of the wider culture, and he hoped that if faithful Christians that I might know could work with him, because of course Christians had also struggled with the wider secular culture, we might be able to be a bridge to help faithful Muslims learn how to engage more positively with life in Woking. So his big plan was that we should arrange some events together that might bring Christians and Muslims together. And the first one was in October 1997, when I spoke at Shah Jahan Mosque on I Believe in Jesus. So we had worked out the plan, and I would speak for 25 minutes, and then I was to be questioned by people, Christian and Muslim, from those who had been listening. The other half of the deal was that the week after, he would speak at St. Paul's Church, which was fortunately without a vicar at the time to object. So I'd managed to persuade the church wardens that it would be a very good idea if the imam from over the road could speak on I Believe in Jesus. And again, there would be question times. It was wonderful. There were over 300 people present on both occasions. And it was wonderful to see Christians and Muslims beginning to learn to know each other and trust each other. And from those events, friendships between Muslims and Christians in Woking developed. and more visits to the mosque took place. It's ever so easy to arrange a visit to the mosque. I just used to say, anybody want to come? And a crowd of them people would come with me. A year later, we arranged another big event, this time not at the mosque, but at Bishop David Brown's school. And the topic we'd come up with was really quite provocative. Christians and Muslims living as minorities in secular Britain. Again, big crowds came, and there was food, which there hadn't been at either of our previous visits, and opportunities for more questions and people to meet each other. And this was wonderful stuff going on. And one of the many friends I made in those days was Ilyas Raja, who had been a county councillor in Maybury. And in 2006, he had been talking with Ray Morgan, the chief exec of Woking Borough Council, about the need for an organisation which would bring Muslims and Christians together on a regular basis. So I now want to hand over to Ilyas, who has dodged out of his council meeting to tell us this part of the story. So this is my part finished for the time being. I'll come back to rest of the story later.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Almighty God, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Thanks, Richard. I am impressed by your opening remarks. Respected ladies and gentlemen, good evening and Assalamu alaikum. In 1996, before joining the Woking Borough Council as an elected Labour councillor, I used to work in Ethnic Minority Advice Centre in Vestry Hall in Meacham, South London. Prior to the merger of Meacham, Morden, and Wimbledon, Vestry Hall used to be the town center for Meacham. And when the civic offices moved to Morden, that big building was given to the public sector. And I think there were round about 22 different organizations, including those catering the ethnic minority needs, had their organizational office in there. And all these organizations were funded by the London Borough grant units. I believe the one condition on all the resident organizations was to work for the peace and harmony within the borough. We decided to celebrate collectively each organization's religious or national day celebration, like Christmas, Eid Milan Party, Diwali, and numerous others. There were 8 or 9 collective celebrations which took place every year in a very friendly atmosphere. This led me to bring forward a similar idea to Woking, aiming at improving community spirit within Woking. And with the help of community leaders such as yourself, I believe we have formed the excellent community relations here in Woking. It only adds to Woking's history, because Woking in its own right is a pioneer of interfaith strategy. In early December 2006, I discussed this idea with Ray Morgan, the chief executive of Woking Borough Council. I am thankful to him. He agreed with the idea wholeheartedly and encouraged me to liaise with Richard Koch. I contacted Richard and we decided to meet on the 6th December 2006 to discuss our objective, which can now be seen in the shape and form of working people of faith. In the very first meeting, Richard was very enthusiastic toward this project. Ray also assisted us with the right tools. And our next meeting, which included Richard, myself, Brigadier Salamat Saab, may God bless his soul, and Zafar, Dr. Zafar, as a community engagement officer for the Woking Borough Council. In addition to tonight's respected speakers, I would like to mention a few more people who have supported the project, such as Rob and Jill, Keith, Simon, and Professor Nasar Ahmed Soleimani, who was the Imam of Shah Jahan Mosque at the time. I'm also grateful to the former Bishop of Guildford, Lord Christopher Hill, who used to invite us to his residence for the meetings and greatly encouraged and supported our good cause. I thank all members of the Board of Trustees who played a positive and significant role to make it the organization of today. Our initial meeting used to take place in Shah Jahan Mosque and the St. Paul Church. I must mention here that after each meeting and function, I always received positive feedback regarding meetings and the delicious Asian food. My sincere thanks goes to mosque and church admin committees. I understand there is a lot more to do yet, and very much optimistic that with the involvement of Julie Fisher, the organization will keep earning a good name in the future. I'm also thankful and grateful to the organizer of this wonderful evening and would like to assure them my full support and cooperation. Finally, I would like to thank you all for your time to attend this meeting. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ilyas. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
And I promised Philip that he would have a chance to say a word or two because Philip was on some subcommittee. I can never remember what they're all called, but Philip, you had an interesting story around about that time.
Yes. Can I just check you can hear me? Right. Okay. So this was such a strange, I knew nothing of this background. It's all come as news to me. And I do commend Richard and my friend Ilyas for all the pioneering work they did. What happened that I'm going to recount was so unusual. I recorded in full in my recent book. And if I may say so to Julia Fisher, in congratulating her upon her appointment, if you would like to nick Douglas Spink's copy, you might enjoy the chapter on Woking Borough Council. So in 2006-07, just to explain the strange workings of the council to those who don't live by it, there was for a year Liberal Democrat control. We ran the executive. I was deputy leader. It's gone downhill ever since, of course. But also there was an overview and scrutiny committee whose job, chaired by an opposition councillor, was to keep tabs on what the executive was doing, perfectly rightly. And I therefore used to go along to this committee, which I was not a member, just to see what the children were up to. And I came into this meeting, and in a very unpleasant action, a councillor got up, demanded an item of urgent priority business, and waved around in an agitated way the copy of the Christmas issue in 2006 of the council's magazine. What was agitating him? On the front page was a picture of a lovely Muslim lady, incidentally a council employee, celebrating Diwali in precisely the multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-religious way, Richard, that you so eloquently described. And he was very angry. He said this was an attack on Christianity, that in the run-up to Christmas, you should not be publicizing other religions. He seemed to think, insofar as you can apply the word think to his mind, that religion was somehow a zero-sum game in which one went up and the next one went down. Absolute nonsense. And it was a dreadful evening. I was really almost speechless, which is, as you will know, rare for me, but I was so angry. And when we talked afterwards, I talked at some length to Ray Morgan, and he said he would deal with it. He actually dealt with, as he told me at the time, by ringing you for guidance, Richard. And you explained religion was not a zero-sum game. So that's my initial involvement. I may well come back later, but it was certainly a formative experience in my political life.
Thank you very much, Philip. A plug for his book, if anybody wants to. Here we are, walking through different worlds. Anyway, so if you understand it all, you'll find it interesting. But you need to be involved in local politics, and most of us aren't. But there we go. Thank you, Philip. Ilyas and I met soon after that event, as he said, and with Brigadier Salamat and with Zafar. And it's very sad that Zafar can't be with us to speak, because Zafar played an immensely large part in the development of Woking People of Faith. So once Ilyas had got a group of us working together, the speed with which things happened was remarkable, because the first gathering that we produced was for the 3rd of February 2007. Brigadier Salamat, who was chair of the Mosque Committee at the time, joined me as joint chair of the new, what was called Christian Muslim Forum for Woking. Our slogan was working together for a better Woking. But other people, apart from myself, Zafar and Tim Brown and Johnny Blair and others worked together with Ray Morgan to produce things like constitution, work out who trustees could be, a management committee, and much else. And Tim has been going back through the files and is reminding himself of all that. So Tim Brown is now going to take the next stage of the process.
Thank you, Richard. Yes, it was at this point that after the pioneering work that Ilyas and Richard had done, that there was a recognition that some of that boring, tedious work needed to be done behind the scenes to actually constitute what was going to become Woking People of Faith. And I remember being invited in for a meeting in Ray Morgan's office at the Borough Council and being introduced to Zafar. And we were then tasked with doing precisely that. And I had the enormous joy and privilege of working with Zafar over those next few months. And yeah, it was simply a case of trying to constitute the charity, put together a constitution that would reflect the values of respect and inclusion and tolerance that we were looking to build in from the start. And yeah, so within a few months we were constituted and registered with the Charity Commission in our own right. And yeah, I would just like to echo what Richard has said about Zafar's input. He was a huge part. He has been a huge part of the story of Working People of Faith, and it's a great shame that he can't be on this call. And just to say, from my point of view, the great value of of the organisation, were certainly those early years when I was involved, was we had some really good meetings. We had interesting topics and we had good speakers, but the real value of what we were doing was what was going on the tables. It was what was going on over a cup of tea and a samosa as people got to know one another, because what had become very obvious was we had so many diverse communities in Woking, that amongst whom there was very little mixing. And so that opportunity to get together, to get to know one another was invaluable. And just to say, I now live in Birmingham. I'm living in the southeast of Birmingham, an area that is hugely diverse and a city in such need of an organisation like Working People of Faith. There is nothing here that is anything like it. So I do hope that those who are involved today recognise the value of the organisation. And I wouldn't say it's unique, but it's not common. So I do hope that you recognise that you have something very special there.
Thank you, Tim. And one of the things that I was reminded from Johnny that I apparently used to say quite often in our early days was both Islam and Christianity are missionary faiths. They're committed to believing what they believe, and they want everybody else to believe it too. And many's the time I've spoken at a mosque and said, you're Muslims and I'm a Christian, and you want me to become a Muslim. And I say, I'm a Christian and you're Muslims, and I want you to become Christian. And we understand that. We can be committed to our own faiths and determined to pass it on in any way that is sensible and wise. But it doesn't mean that we can't be friends and to work at the hard process of sorting out differences of opinion, how to get the votes through at annual general meetings, and so on and so forth. So it was a great experience for me to work with Muslim people, mostly from Shah Jahan Mosque, who I had grown to know and love very much. But I also began to get to know the Shia community in Banbury, I beg your pardon, in Woking. You can see that I've been in Banbury for 6 years now, in Woking, because first of all, I discovered their base in Portugal Road next to Emmanuel Chapel. They'd also bought another property on Goldsworth Road, and I got to know Dr. Naqvi quite well. We asked him to be vice chair of the management committee, and he is now a trustee and chair of the Surrey Muslim Association and trustee and general secretary of the national organisation Mosques and Imams National Advisory Board. So I've agreed with Dr. Naqvi that I can ask him some questions. So perhaps you'd put Dr. Naqvi on so I can ask him those questions.
Yes.
And look forward to, I suppose we both need to be speakers, don't we, Causa? Yep. So my first question, Dr. Naqvi, is what have been the challenges and encouragements that you have seen in recent years? If I say recent years, this is because, of course, we left Woking 6 years ago. In recent years.
Thank you, Richard. and assalamu alaikum and good evening to everyone. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. One beautiful saying of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He said, Khairun nas man yanfa'un nas. Best of you is someone who is the most beneficial for others. So this saying of Prophet is telling us to work with others, to be supportive, to be helpful to each other. And when I was few years old, I observed my father and the people around, so they were helping each other. So in my town, although due to separation of India and Pakistan, people migrated from Pakistan to India and from India to Pakistan. But in my hometown, there was a Gurdwara of Hindus. So the building was there, and almost once a month, when I was crossing that road, so I was observing that. My organizational story when I went in college, O level, so I joined an organization of students. So since 1980, I am part of different organizations, and luckily, I moved in Woking in 2005. That was the time when Ilyas and Zafar and you and Tim Brown and Johnny Blair, so they were working together or talking together or discussing Woking. Actually, Woking People of Faith was not existing until I involved. Yeah. So it was a Christian Muslim forum. But my vision was maybe this kind of forum will not work for a long time. So why not we should found something that would have long life, even if we are not part of that, but we should found something that should work for interfaith people, for mankind for a long, long time. Then we had many meetings, Tim Brown and Johnny and myself, and you and others in the formation of our constitution. And ultimately, we decided to have proper registered charity. So that is working. We can say it is about 14, 15 years. This organization is working and increasing its work and growth day by day. So coming towards your question, so encouragement, as I said, by birth, what I have learned, that is working for others, being helpful for others. And you can't help until and unless you meet each other, you visit each other, you know each other, you know their issues, and wherever you can help or you can work together to help them. So Alhamdulillah, right now I am a trustee of Woking People of Faith. It is about 14, 15 years. We have another charity, Maybury Trust. For the same time, I am also trustee of Maybury Trust, helping the local people and offering different services. After Woking People of Faith, we Muslim, this whole Surrey County, we sit together and we made Surrey Muslim Association. So it is not only Woking, it is whole Surrey, more than 20 mosques. So we are sitting and talking and working together, and a collective leadership who can sit with others, who can talk with others, and who can guide and who can give the directions. And at national level, MENAB is an organization where all Muslims, all sorts of Muslims, so they are member, and we are trying to have a national leadership for each other. So this was encouragement throughout my life, and especially Woking People of Faith and being Imam of Al-Asr Mosque. So we tried to deliver something. This is, this is charity. These are charities. This is voluntary sector. We are having less resources, minimum resources. Most of the work is volunteer work. But at the same time, we are hopeful. We are optimistic. So we are not working for a monetary reward. We are, through the best feeling and sincerity of our heart, we are welcoming each other, talking with each other, and working people of faith. This is best platform locally for all of us, where Hindu, Muslim, Christians, Jews, Muslims. So we all sit together, we listen together, we work together, we organize a lot of events and eating together, talking together. So we are telling to our people, so this is your choice. Any religion you are going to follow, that is your choice. And you have freedom over there. But as a human being, we are children of Adam and Eve. We came from same region. So we have a lot of commonalities. So let's share our common points, our commonalities with understanding, with peace, with love, with respect. And there are many things when we are neighbor. So in any country, in any area, any neighbor could be there. So as a neighbor, we should not ask the first thing, what's your religion? As a neighbor, first thing we should ask, are you okay? Can I help you? Can I talk with you? Can I support you? So these are the things. So this is, I think this is good for me and good for others. We are working together, I hope, and we will carry on all these things. But especially one thing you asked with the encouragement, that was the challenges. Yes, this time is very challenging time. We are facing COVID-19. It's now more than 1 year. A lot of things have been changed. So we were meeting in St. Paul Church. We were meeting in Shah Jahan Mosque. We were going and visiting different churches, sometime in Woking Borough Council. But now we have been minimized. We are limited. So now this is a new thing. Today we are meeting. This is a virtual world. So this challenge has told us to learn new things, to develop new things, and with little time and little resources, you are able to reach maximum number of people. So always, whenever there is challenge, we should not think we can't go ahead. This is the time to end, to stop. No, whenever there is challenges, always God is opening the doors of his mercies. But we should try to find that door. We should try to open that door. And hopefully we all will try our best to carry on opening these doors and crossing all challenges, whatever we human being and as a working people of faith we are going to face.
That's very encouraging and helpful. Thank you so much, brother. What's your favorite memory of working people of faith?
This is my favorite memory. Working with you, with Tim, with Philip, with Elias, with Imam Hashimi, with Kausar. So different people of different faith, Mita. So we are different people from different organizations, from different faith. But at the same time, very happily, we are welcoming each other, working together. And I love to carry on this kind of work.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, brother. Most encouraging. One of the things that I was going to comment on is that after our first meeting, which was back in February 2007, the next one in March 2008, we had two women speaking, a Christian and a Muslim, speaking about fasting and spirituality. So I'm thinking early on, we were breaking the mold of having it as a men's show, as it were. Very good to do that. The next gathering we had was in March 2008, when we had a discussion at H.G. Wells Suite on the environment, and we had two speakers, one from a Christian charity, one from a Muslim charity, and they've both been heavily involved in environmental issues, and they were determined that they shouldn't say exactly the same thing. So the two speakers, one a woman and one a man, agreed what topics to talk about, and it was most interesting. The sad thing was not too many people came. But at this stage, we were still a Christian and a Muslim event. And we knew that we needed to widen our membership. And I'm going to ask Philip to come back briefly to tell us how it was that we broke out of our Christian Muslim ghetto and welcomed you, another member of an Abrahamic faith. So, Philip, if you've got something to say to us on that.
I don't have a very clear memory of how it happened. I think Ray Morgan probably said to me, you ought to get involved. As I'd ceased to be a counsellor in 2008, and he knew I liked things to do to annoy people, the subtitle of my book. And so he suggested I joined. And I have a very clear memory of a sort of early away day, it may have been the first Woking People of Faith away day, on a Saturday in some centre in Woking, I think maybe St Columba's. And just to pick up something you said earlier, I took a rather different view from other people. Unlike Christianity and Islam, Judaism is not a proselytizing religion. It doesn't actively seek converts. Its philosophical position is, we're here, you're there, what's the problem, guys? And I advanced the doctrine that within a multi-faith context, evangelism and mutual respect were incompatible. Because effectively by evangelism, you were saying, mine's bigger or better than yours, which did not seem to me appropriate within this context. I think I caused a certain amount of consternation by saying that, but I think courteously challenging people's established beliefs is important, and it's very good when you can do it within a framework of constructive friendship. Thereafter, I got involved generally, and I hope I was part of the process of changing the organization from a duologue to a dialogue. And I think that's been beneficial. And even after me, we had all sorts of strange things coming into the room, which I'm sure have been beneficial to all of us.
Right. Thank you, Philip. Very helpful. Soon after that, because you joined the management committee and became a trustee, soon after that, in May 2009, at a diocesan clergy conference, I was talking with Pippa Ross McCabe, who was a clergy member in our deanery. And as we talked, it did seem that she might be interested in working with Woking People of Faith. She applied for the job and was accepted, as we're all blessed by that. Now, she can't be here because she's teaching on her diocesan training course tonight, but Call Bless Her Cotton Socks has interviewed Pippa, and she's going to play the recording of that interview now.
Pippa, it's great to see you.
Hi, it's lovely to be with you. I'm really sorry I can't be with you live this evening, but I'm very pleased to answer your questions.
That's great. Thank you so much for taking time out to record this. So let's get on to the questions. How did you get involved with Woking People of Faith?
It was through a process of networking. I heard about Woking People of Faith through my colleagues, Richard, Cook and Johnny. Initially, we were all at the time members of the clergy in the Diocese of Guildford. We still are members of the clergy, though not all in the Diocese of Guildford, which is in the Church of England. Richard reminded me recently that he had chatted to me about WPOF at a clergy conference. And I grew up in a multicultural, multi-faith society in South Africa, where I learnt how vital it is to understand one another, because fear and conflict and violence follow closely on the heels of poor understanding. So I was really immediately interested in a local project in Woking, which is near where I live, designed to promote and facilitate such understanding across and between the faith groups. So that's how I came to get involved.
Right, okay, cool. So during your time with Woking People of Faith, what would you say you found the most challenging?
Okay. Perhaps the most challenging thing for me was finding ways of addressing the fear, which I mentioned a moment ago, and that's fear in the community. I came across it in lots of places during my time with working people of faith. It's the fear that arises from lack of understanding or from perception of difference. And these things trigger in us as human beings our natural defense mechanisms as human beings. And we tend to corral, we gather in groups with others who share our beliefs and our cultural practices. And I think this fear and defensiveness demands respect. In other words, it's not wise to run at it with a battering ram. And I'm also human, and I know what it is to feel threatened by beliefs and cultural practices that are not familiar to me. And I know what it is to hold to a faith which is really important to me. And I also know about living with a number of different demands that life brings. So the challenge was to keep recognizing the roots of people's lack of interest or resistance to the work, so that we could better address these with respect and with diligence.
Thank you. So during your time with Working People of Faith, do you have a favorite moment or a memory?
Gosh, I have so many that it's really difficult to choose. So I wonder if I might offer two, one on a large scale and perhaps one much smaller, just to give a sense of a flavor. So on the larger scale, I have a particular memory of the event we held on the difficult occasion of the anniversary of the 9/11 events in the States. We were very sensitive to the possibility that these kinds of commemorations could be used to deepen Islamophobia, for example. And so my memory is of a particularly poignant moment in that context. We were in Woking Town Square, which was full of people of different faiths and cultures. There was lots of color. People were holding white balloons as well as a sign of peace. And as part of the proceedings, we paused to share peace with one another. And my particular memory is of watching the crowd turn inwards and begin moving around, and people greeting one another and sharing peace. And that became quite an extended moment because there was such a sense of delight in doing that activity. So that was one favorite moment. And by contrast, a kind of smaller and more intimate event, if you like, was on my birthday, which happens to be in February, and therefore it's always dark and grey like it is now. And we held one of our women's coffee mornings in Woking Town Centre in one of the coffee shops. And again, women from different cultures and faiths gathered. Some of us already knew each other. And there were a few new faces present as well. And I remember the delight that was evident between us as we greeted one another. Those would be two of my memories.
That's beautiful. I remember being there with the balloons, and I just remember the feeling of releasing of the balloons. You just saw this white, the balloons being released into the sky, and it was nice.
It was very special, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it was really, cool. So one of our trustees asked this question: how did you keep smiling?
Well, that was easy, really, because people keep me smiling, Kautha. Not only the colleagues on the management committee and trustees with whom I worked most closely, but the many people I had the honor to meet in the day-to-day work that WPOF does. So people keep me smiling.
That's great. What message would you give to people about interfaith in general? And what message would you give to interfaith practitioners? So, for example, some of our trustees.
Okay, two things I think, both coming out of things that I learned and I'm most grateful for in my time with WPOF. Firstly, I learned a great deal about how important it is confidently to inhabit one's own faith in an interfaith environment. In other words, that it's from a place of being confident about our own faith that we're better able to be inquisitive about and respectful of others. And I'd say that this is vital. So what I mean is that it's vital to communicate and to understand that we are not working together to create some kind of anything goes, a bit of this, a bit of that sort of soup, like a soup made of 1,000 ingredients which don't necessarily harmonize. We're not trying to achieve that, but rather, if I can dare to extend the metaphor, it's much more like gathering different shaped and textured ingredients or different foods on a plate and celebrating the variety and richness there, and learning more about ourselves and one another exactly through paying attention to these differences. So that would be the first thing, that owning, standing confidently within one's own faith tradition is a really important part of the ability to be inquisitive about and open to learning about other people and other faiths. Secondly, I suppose I'd say keep up the good work and support one another. It is a challenging work, not only because of the fear and suspicion which is around, but because each faith group has, I used to say each group has a first priority really, which is to nurture and establish that faith in their own communities. And I found that if there is any energy left in faith communities, then it might possibly be directed towards relationships across faiths and cultures. So it helps to bear this in mind. There's a great art to getting onto an already full agenda. But this is such an important work for community and for society in general that it's really worth the effort. So I would say keep up the good work and keep supporting one another in this delicate but vital work.
Thank you. Beautiful words of wisdom as always, Pippa. We really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Pleasure, and I hope you have a really good evening together, and bless you in your work, Author. Nice to see you.
You too. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Well, we're not surprised at all there that what Pippa had to say was quality gold dust for us, because she helped us enormously. She helped me enormously from just being rather chaotic and disorganized to having direction and shape and whatever. So with Pippa's help and help of many other volunteers, other things got organized. I remember Zafar and I early on helped put an exhibition together in the Lightbox. Then we ran cricket and football festivals. I remember umpiring for 80 overs in one particular day. It was great fun, but I wished I could play, but I was beyond that by then. And actually, the cricket and football festivals attracted people who would never have come to one of our sort of talking meetings. So that was great. Then as I'm looking back through documents, I noticed that in the annual meeting of 2012, various things happened. I recorded various things. The World Interfaith Harmony Week. Woking People of Faith worked with the Bishop of Guildford's Christian Muslim Forum and the Surrey County Council Faith Links coordinator, who was causer by that stage. And there was a big event at Shah Jahan Mosque involving over 100 people of activities and workshops, bringing people together who would never have met otherwise. We also welcomed other communities onto our management committee and trustees. So there was a Hindu group, the Anand Milan community. Simon Trick joined from the Baha'i, welcome, and Keith Scott from the Quakers. And as we were approaching the start of the centenary of the start of the 1914 war, Shah Jahan, I remember, hosted big historical exhibitions about the Indian Army soldiers who had fought on the Western Front before there were many British soldiers fighting on the Western Front. And I must end by talking about Zafar's enormous contribution, because I remember many times from 2012 onwards, he was talking about English Heritage and Horsell Common Preservation Society working together to do something with the Muslim graveyard. And Zafar, with loads of others and help from the Borough Council, got it turned into the Woking Peace Garden. I'm afraid we had left Woking by that stage, so I wasn't able to go to the opening ceremony on the 12th of November 2015, when His Royal Highness the Earl of Wessex opened it. And I still have not yet been to the Peace Garden. So one of our visits to Woking shortly, I must go. So that's the end of my little bit. Okay, so over to you, Causa, or Simon.
Thank you very much, Richard, and thank you very much to all our speakers there. It's a fascinating insight. I knew only small amounts of what had been going on, so it's been wonderful. May I just say that I particularly remember that 2012 Interfaith Harmony meeting at the Shah Jahan Mosque. We were all in there, and it was a wonderful event. We all, of course, had to take our shoes off. I especially remember it because someone moved their chair back, it landed on my toe, and I broke my toe. But that's beside the point. It was seriously a wonderful event, and thank you so much for all the wonderful memories you've all been speaking about this evening. It's been very enlightening. Now, two people need to speak. We're giving a couple of minutes to Shahid Azim, and then we will have Julie Fisher, who's going to speak. But if we can have, is Shahid available, Causa?
It should be. So Shahid, if you can hear us, you can stop, please. If not, we can continue and then he can join later. I think he was driving the car in the car and he might be just getting inside.
Okay, thank you. In that case, I'm going to open the floor to Julie Fisher, who is, I believe, going to be the next CEO for Woking Borough Council. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Simon, and thank you very much for inviting me tonight. It's a real privilege to be with you, and fascinating stories from Richard and Ilias and Philip, and I feel extremely privileged and very proud actually to be appointed Chief Executive of Woking. So I'll take over from Ray, who has many stories to tell on the 1st of April. So I'm hearing new things every day in the sort of handover period as I lead up to the 1st of April. So you know, it was only when Causa asked me to come join you this evening that I actually found out about all the fantastic work that you've been doing. So great to hear that tonight. And just a little bit about me, I suppose, just to let you know about me. I live in Surrey, so I live actually in Farnham, so the sort of southwest corner. And I used to work at Surrey County Council and culminated in being the interim chief exec for a few months actually in 2017-18. I've worked with Ray Morgan for some years actually. And I worked with him when I was at Surrey, and I always used to say to all my colleagues at Surrey County Council, if we want to try something new and innovative and different, that actually we should go and speak to Woking, because Woking always found a way of doing different things and meaningful things that made a difference on the ground. So that was my experience of Woking, and then I was asked by Ray to support him while he was off on his leave of absence a couple of years ago. So I've been involved in the town centre development, but as I've learned more and more about Woking, my ambition was to, of course, apply for the role, and I'm very happy to have been appointed. It's a really special place. And that's not just about, you know, the place as in, you know, the buildings. It's a special place actually because of the culture and the diversity of Woking. And actually just because of this, because of you guys tonight, it really is a special place. And I was asked during my interview process actually about what did I think about the culture of Woking and what would I change? And I said to my interviewers, well, actually, there isn't really anything that I would change about the culture of Woking. And I think it's more about my role will be about nurturing what's actually been developed and grown and nurtured over the years. And I think, you know, that applies to the staff that work in Woking Borough Council, but actually, and our partners, but actually to the community as well. So my role is to nurture that and grow and develop that. And that's what I'd like to do with you in the future. So I will support and join these conversations as much as I can, because I think they are hugely, hugely important. Important for people's health and happiness, for everyone, for all residents across the borough. So, and I'm extremely pleased that you're a progressive group, that you invited 2 women speakers in March 2008. So I will be obviously championing the women of the borough. I'm particularly passionate, I have to say, around supporting children and young people so that they, I suppose, they can fulfill their dreams, whatever their dreams may be. And it'd be good to talk to you and understand about how that sort of the interfaith conversations work with younger people as well, and how that happens within schools and what we can do to promote that, because that's one thing that I'm very passionate about. And that kind of tolerance and respect for difference is something that is really, really important from a very young age. So that'd be something that I'd be really interested in. So that, I suppose that's me really, extremely supportive. Thank you very much for inviting me along, and please do ask me any questions that you'd like to. It can be about me and my background and what I want to do in Woking, but I'm sure we'll have opportunity I hope we'll have opportunity to meet face to face in the not too distant future, because I'm quite looking forward to the delicious Asian food that you were talking about in particular. So I look forward to that. So, and any questions for me?
Well, Julie, what we're going to be doing now actually is we're going to have a couple of minutes of Shahid speaking, okay. And then we have a question and answer session for the panel as a whole. So, okay. and you may be involved in that, but
okay, that's okay. Great. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you very much for coming along tonight. It's a pleasure having you here. We're looking forward to working with you as well, you know, hopefully growing and expanding and developing ourselves. And developing our role and helping you with yours as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I could move now to Shahid. Thank you for waiting, Shahid. We get a couple. I have to keep it to a couple of minutes, I'm afraid, Shahid, because we will have a question and answer session. But please, over to you.
Thank you, Richard. So first of all, thank you for inviting me. Very familiar with Woking People of Faith, and I just give my personal background. I lived most of my life, well, 40 years of my 50-year life in the UK was spent in Guildford, and the last 10 years in Woking. And the 2 instrumental people behind it, one was Zafar, to help with the Woking Asian Business Forum, and then within 6 months, Ray persuaded me to move my house, office, the family into Woking. So I've been here 10 years, and I have to say, I echo what Julie said, that this borough has the can-do attitude, and it's a most diverse community. We have everybody working together, and I think for me, what's so passionate about Woking is the fact that it's all working together and the support they get from council. Now, for me, with Woking People of Faith, when I first became a chairman of Woking Asian Business Forum, they said, could we, we want to be part of the community. So as you know, in 2009 and until every year since then, we have donated the official Christmas tree into the town square from the Woking Asian community. And this year, actually, we expanded. We've given the Christmas tree to the Aldershot through the Muslim Association, Aldershot and District. I've got no line, by the way. So I'm not in business since Christmas trees, so it's nothing to do with that. I just thought it's a great message, and I think it's a great message about togetherness. And what I've really learned this year as a High Sheriff, first, I'm so pleased I've got 2 chaplains. One's with Phil Simpson, and the other is obviously the Imam Hashmi as my 2 religious chaplain. With COVID, I think what was really fascinating and the most amazing and poignant thing for me was how certainly in Woking, how the churches and the mosque got together to support people. An example was that the Shah Jahan volunteers were providing food, funded by the St Dunstan Church. So the money came from the St Dunstan Church to the Woking Muslims, to the Shah Jahan Mosque, and from there, the food was actually, believe it or not, bought from his church, which is a Christian organization by the Muslims, and distributed to 90% of people who weren't Christian. That tells you what Woking people of faith was. And back of that, we had the royal visit, and actually both Sophie and Prince Edward were very keen to learn more about Woking people of faith and wanted to do something a lot more, visit Woking, again, meet the people of Woking people of faith, because I've been very proud of what, guys, that you've done there. And I think what's led on from there now is that I'm working very closely with the bishop, trying to help through Phil Simpson with the twinning of the dioceses of Selcourt with Guildford. And next week I have a meeting with the lieutenancy and the bishop, and I think the people of faith, trying to create a faith group, again, very, trying to replicate what you guys are doing, and obviously trying to be greedy, copy your model really, to how we can make it more county-wise. So I think it's a fantastic organization, and learn from 2004 what you guys have done. And we are, first of all, from a county, very proud of you, but particularly from Woking Borough, I think we're very, very proud to have you as our people of faith. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much indeed, Shahid. It's really much appreciated, your contribution, and all your work too is appreciated. Please continue with your work. It's something we'll support. Thank you. So now it comes down to the question and answer sessions. Now I have been looking through the chat box, and so far I have seen 0 questions. Although I did just read from Serena Linney, it's great to hear an interest for youth as part of my Woking women's group. She says, we have 13 different nationalities, definitely diverse Woking. Love this. So thank you for that, Serena. Do we have any particular, if you have any particular questions you'd like to address to to our panel, to any of our speakers, then please type it into the chat box. So if you go down to the bottom of your screen, if you're on a laptop, go to the bottom, go to where it says chat, and then you can type in to everyone. If you're on a phone, I've no idea what you do because I've never used a phone with Zoom. Kauther, is anything, can you help with that?
Yeah, and just to let you know, for those who joined us later, we did take your videos off so that you could focus on the speakers. But now, if you want to, you can put your video on as well, so that we can see everyone. It'd be great to see everyone. And you can also send your questions through the chat. Thank you.
So in the meantime, while we're waiting for questions to come through, let me just ask a general question then to our panelists while we're waiting. What did you find to be it's a question that's been asked of various people. What did you find to be the greatest challenge and the greatest challenge and maybe the easiest part of being with Woking people of faith? And I'm going to start, and remember I'm keeping you to a minute, everybody, and I'm going to be timing you on my phone, only to give everyone a chance to speak. So Richard, could I start with you, please? What was your biggest challenge? What did you find easiest?
Well, at my last Sunday at Goldsworth Park, I commented that I was very blessed to have 3 organising women around me as vicar at Goldsworth Park for 21 years. And I would have said that Pippa fulfilled that function hugely for me. I tend to be a sort of person who lives in a natural fog, and it helps when somebody like Pippa sorted me out. So she was extraordinarily helpful. But then I love sport. So the idea of being able to arrange these cricket festivals and football festivals was just wonderful. It was difficult. We got rained off in one year. I can't remember which it was, but I mean, so good to get people together to enjoy being in each other's company, and a certain pretty determined rivalry on the cricket field, particularly. Whew. So, yeah, I enjoyed that very much. I also found in my wardrobe upstairs, can you see this?
Yeah, a bit higher. That's it. Lovely. Believe it or not, check it out.
Well, and what it was that there was this exhibition at the Lightbox, and shameless self-promotion. Members of Working People of Faith in those early days were wearing these red T-shirts and wandering around and trying to get people to go to the Lightbox. So, yeah.
Right, I have to cut you off there, Richard. Thank you very much. I'm going to pass to Philip now. Philip, thank you for that, Richard.
I think the best thing has been the personal context, because prejudice, which literally means judging before you know the facts, is a product of groupthink. When you know people as individuals, you don't have prejudice, you have knowledge, and it all works much better. The difficult things have been, in any voluntary organization, you sometimes have to take tough decisions. And in more recent years, we've had to take 2 pretty tough decisions which interacted. One was sorting out the constitution, which may have been put together in good faith. But as Julie will know, in the professional drafting world, if you ask a committee to draft a horse, it comes up with a camel. And we had a particularly dreadful camel, which needed to be de-humped. And we also had a very difficult situation with the previous organizer. Let me not dwell on it for a pleasant evening, but even in voluntary organizations, you sometimes have to make quite tough decisions, and they're difficult, but they're worthwhile. And you have to do them in the interest of the organization.
Okay. Thank you very much, Philip. Johnny, I realize that you didn't actually speak today, although you were one of the founding members of Working People of Faith. I'd like to give you a chance to say so, because you worked with us for so many years. So please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I think like Philip, I'd say the relationships. I mean, it's lovely to see people on screen and say, you know, count you my friends, and that's great. And it's been great when I came to Walton-on-Thames, which is where I am now. We had an issue in a house that the church owns. We couldn't where there was a tenant, and talking with Cortha, and she put me in touch with some local Muslim families here to really help work through that situation. So that was great. To me, that was sort of relationships, you know, from Working People of Faith, and because they were warm, supportive relationships, it went on to a really practical level as well. And I think always the challenge is apathy or people's time. As has been mentioned, you know, Pippa mentioned that it's a huge challenge. So much good. I was looking at the first sort of strap line that we have, and I don't know whether Philip likes it or not, but we started off, in January 2007, we have got a meeting note that says we agreed the name to be as follows: Working People of Faith Forum, with a strap line of celebrating diversity in faith and culture. And I love that, celebrating diversity, because that's what it's about when it comes to it. But also there's faith and there's culture. And I find the interplay between faith and culture and working that out with people of other faith and people of other cultures fascinating. It's a really interesting conversation.
Thank you very much indeed. Let's go, Dr. Naqvi.
Thank you, Simon. We are missing today Dr. Zafar Iqbal. We pray for his quick recovery and perfect health. And he was also main person to organize a football tournament every year. And that was also Winston Churchill School's pitch. So most of the time, different teams, 6, 7 teams, even more than that. So they were having quite rivalry matches with each other. And also, yes, this is volunteer sectors. We are having a lot of challenges, but at the same time, facing all these things, a lot of joy and happiness we are getting from each other, the energy, positive energy we are receiving from each other to work together and move forward. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to move on to Tim. I realize you were involved with helping set up the Constitution, etc. What was it? What did you find was a big challenge for you, sir? And what did you enjoy?
It's a long time ago now, but I have to say probably the biggest challenge was trying to avoid wearing one of those T-shirts that Richard just held up. One of the biggest pleasures. I was often involved in the logistical side, or organising meetings and I think the early football tournaments. One of the things I remember very strikingly was, and coming, as Johnny said, often organising volunteers finding volunteers is really tough. There was just a great group of young guys from Dr. Naqvi's mosque, from Al-Azhar, and I still remember now just how committed, available, diligent they were. They were just so much fun to work with, and it was experiences like that stay with you.
Thank you very much indeed. I realized we did have other people who spoke, like for example Julie and Shahid, but as we were the people who were I'm asking the questions. Oh, I missed out Ilyas, haven't I? Ilyas, I'm so sorry. I just realized I was trying to find everybody on my screen at the top of my my screen there. I knew there was someone I missed. So Ilyas, the biggest challenge and most fun.
Thank you, Simon. Actually, for the living people, there are always many challenges. When I became the counselor first time, I noticed that there were some sort of stereotype of things were going on, especially for the Asian people. What was the general concept was that, oh, they won't allow the ladies to work according to their wishes or things like that. That time, I thought that it's best time to empower the Asian ladies especially. And we set up a group with the help of Asian women's named Hamnawa UK. Hamnawa means like-minded people. And all of you will be happy to know this, that's the only organization in Woking Borough Council which haven't applied for any grant up till today. But that organization supported at least 10 times to the different mayors' charity, 6 times to the Woking Hospice, 2 times Woking Community Hospital, 2 times St. Peter Hospital, and there are many other organizations. I need not to mention all of these. And we gave the thousands of pounds to these organizations. And that's only with the support of the ladies. And now whoever, our chief guests like Ray Morgan, the mayors, or the other people comes to our function, and this sometimes they talk to me and says that, oh, there are more ladies than the gents. And that's what we have been doing up till today. And I'm sure that whatever things come into your way as a challenge, when you do it with full dedication, you come over it. And I'm happy to mention Hamnawa here as well.
Thank you very much. Now I'm aware that we're getting a little short of time, so I'm looking through one or two questions I've got here. One question is about, do you have all the religion? This is something Philip can probably answer most quickly and easily as our lawyer in tow here. Do you have all the religious groups in Woking on board people of faith, or do they have a selective list? Could you answer that, Philip?
Well, in our constitution, we recognize the international world definition of established religions, and we build that into our constitution. And they are the only people, and I couldn't do the list offhand, but you can Google it somewhere, who are allowed to be in our inner workings. But there are issues that come up. For instance, there are little sects around the place who come away from religions, and those mainstream religions rise in horror when they come across those sects. So, for instance, the Ahmadiyya, who are reasonable and decent people, and the way they're treated in Pakistan is awful, nevertheless cannot be allowed into our inner workings, because it would cause mainstream Muslims to walk out of the room. So we say to them they're welcome at our functions, but they are not allowed to be part of our committee structure, because we rely on that world definition. Because one thing you've got to do is you've got to take into account the sensitivities of individual groups.
Okay, thank you very much, Philip. Okay, as a lawyer in tow here, you were the best person to answer that and have more experience with the information here. I've got, let's just see. Julie mentioned youth and schools. Kautha mentions the education project. Have working people of faith been involved in any other interfaith work in schools since its inception? Now, of course, I wasn't there at the inception, so I am going to go back. I'm going to go to Johnny, I think, actually, first of all, because I know, Philip, you can tell us various things about the most recent work. But Johnny, can you tell us anything about, has working people of faith been involved in any other interfaith?
Than me.
Sorry?
Much more Kautha than me. She's
true. Okay, that's fair enough. But she's not one of the speakers, and you are. That's why I was mentioning you. But Johnny, has there been any interfaith work in schools since the inception that you were involved or know about in the early days?
There's been quite a bit at different times, and trying different angles and ways of engaging schools. I think early days it was always a challenge, to have the volunteers during the daytime to be able to go into schools, and that was a real challenge when we started off, and also to working out with a good program that we could go, because we found initially, and Pippa was quite involved in trying to get into schools when she joined, to get the respect of a teaching staff or the head teachers in schools to be able to come in, because it's quite a thing. What product have you got, and what are you going to be saying? How does this fit in with my curriculum? So that we investigated various things. We came up with one or two things, and then obviously you got very involved, with the schools and with the prose and the poetry and the drawings and things later on, which really developed from not a strong base. We fought harder to try and do things than we were successful. So we tried different things. I wouldn't say it took off until you and Kautha were involved in what you got involved in, Simon.
Thank you very much there, Johnny. I appreciate that what you've just said probably covers what I imagine that Richard would probably be in agreement with what you said there from the early days. My thought would be, unless you've got anything you can add to that, Richard, maybe, and realize you're not a speaker, Kautha, however, you have been hosting. Perhaps you could mention briefly some things that we are involved in today.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we do have an education project, and we are working mostly with primary school, although we would like to work with secondary schools as well. Every year for the last, I think, 7 years now, we've had an International Day of Peace celebration where we do a competition for primary age children, and we pick a theme, on which the children are asked to either write a poem or draw a poster. One year we did an essay as well, but then we thought it took ages to judge that one. Let's just scrap that. Poems and posters, which takes us a good 3 to 4 hours. It's quite a big task, you know, it's not easy to do. And so it's quite a big task, the whole organizing, but it's really worthwhile, especially when we celebrate out there on Mercia Walk in the town centre in public. It's an amazing event. I'm sure most of you will have probably been there. And recently we've started to do dramas as well. So we had the young children acting out role plays and things like that to make it more interesting. So that's one way we've engaged with them. The other is actually holding interfaith events at the school, either an assembly where we have a panel of faith speakers and we are given a set theme to speak on, which helps within the school curriculum. Or, and then we do like a Q&A session, or we work with the whole year group and go into different classes with a much more in-depth talk into our different faiths. So we've used different formats with schools, and recently working with SACRE, which is the Standing Advisory Council for RE, we've put on some training for interfaith forums where they can get a better insight into how schools work so that we can work alongside the school syllabus and be much more supportive of and give a more enriching experience to children around RE, because especially nowadays a lot of the teachers are not specialized in teaching RE, so it appears a bit dull, a bit dry, and not always true as well. Unfortunately, our teachers, they don't always have a good resource, so sometimes you do get students saying, Miss, I don't think that's true, you know, and sometimes the children are telling the teacher what their beliefs are. So we've had cases like that, and I think we've got a really strong case for working with schools, but we do have this challenge because we've trying to fight for that space, especially in secondary. In primary, it seems to be a bit easier to get in there and do some work, but in secondary, RE is already not being taught as well as it should be. So trying to get speakers in is really difficult. So we would really appreciate any support that we can get from you, Julie, or anyone here who works with secondary school in specific, but early years is really good as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. I realize we've really come to the end of our time, and we didn't have any more questions on the chat, although a comment here from Mita, who's one of our trustees, to say that sport is a great connector. You're absolutely right, it is. And we reintroduced the cricket this year, having not done it for some time, and it was a joy to have everybody involved in that, both Muslims and Hindus, it was a great event. So it's down to me now, I think, to first of all thank all of our speakers. So if I could thank Richard Cook, Reverend Richard Cook, I should say, Reverend Johnny Blair, Dr. Syed Naqvi, Philip Goldenberg, Mohammed Ilyas Raja, Tim Brown, Reverend Pippa Ross McCabe, and the incoming CEO, Julie Fisher, and our High Sheriff, Shahid Azim, who came in late, but wonderful to have you here. I'd like to thank all of you for giving your time and speaking to us tonight and bringing back some fantastic memories, and also letting us know things that we didn't know about. Many of us, people like myself, didn't know anything about. But I would, and Richard, I'd like to thank you for being so involved in coordinating the work with all the other speakers as well to try to make things flow, and you did a great job of that. Thank you so much for that. Can I also thank, sorry, Richard, can I also thank Kautha for hosting the meeting tonight. She's done a fantastic job. Really well done, Kautha. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, indeed.
And thank you for the involvement of people who've given time and given questions, etc. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful evening.